Hey guys, I know I haven't posted in a while, but I wanted to share with you guys this old content that I had to hopefully help some of you guys that are debating or have your racing seats already and you don't know how to install them on your car, especially the electrical side of things. Back in May of last year, I actually picked up a pair of seats and I only installed the driver's seat just to test it out and see if I liked it, etc. Mainly because at my height, in my driving position, my big issue was the fact that the rear view mirror is right in my direct line of sight. So anytime I need to pan my head this way, it's literally in my line of sight. So I have to do this and kind of go around it. It's very annoying. So my intent was to get these racing seats that hopefully would sit lower so I can look directly under the mirror. Unfortunately, that did not work out, but I did still record all the content as to how to install the driver's seat. I did not get to do the passenger side, but at least I wanted to get this out to you guys, so hopefully help someone out. Take a look.
Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Eddie, and today we're going to be putting some custom seats in my car. Check them out. Shout out is for Champagne S3, because he did a write-up on how to replace the seats on his S3, and he went into very high detail on the wiring side of things. So much respect to him. All right, so this is what I ended up picking. This is styled after a Recaro Sportster CS. And I did do a few custom things to it. I wanted an OEM Plus look for it. I didn't want the seats to stand out too much, but I did want it to be like an obvious upgrade, but not like in your face upgrade, you know? And I think I achieved that here. Oh, by the way, these are carbon fiber back. This is real carbon fiber. Take a peek here. That is all carbon fiber right there, the whole back shell. Look at the weave there. So not only that, these already come with the sliders on it, so I didn't have to source those separately, thankfully. And I opted for them to add seat heating on it. So I have a separate circuit for your back, and I have a separate circuit for the lower part of the seat. I am not going to do this right now because I have like 7 months before I actually need seat warmers. Then off to the side here, I have my Planted Technologies brackets. These are one of the highest quality brackets that they make out there. And one of the notes that they had on their website, particularly about using them along with Sportster CSs, is that CSs tend to ride low, and you may have issues with the sliders on here coming into contact with the bracket. So they recommend to go ahead and use these spacers. What these will do is that they'll actually mount between the bottom of the sliders and the brackets here to bring up the seat a little bit, and that will give you the clearance that you need in order to not hit. I did have my own hardware already from my bucket of bolts, nuts and bolts, so I got that set up here. And something we're gonna need for the airbag, because obviously this does not have side airbags, is we gotta trick the car into thinking that the airbag is still there. Otherwise, you're gonna have an error for airbags. So I'm using these jumper leads, and they are gonna be wired in with these resistors. These are 3.3 ohm resistors that I'm gonna put on in here, and I'll show you guys later. This is all for the driver's side. On the passenger side, I have to additionally deal with the seat occupancy sensor. I'm not dealing with that right now. Right now, I'm only focused on the driver's side. Let's get this in first, and then I will figure out the occupancy sensor. All right, with that said, let's take out the factory seat. So obviously, things could differ from one car to another, but on my car, I'll show you what I'm doing. The first thing I did is I put the seat back as far forward as it goes. There it is. And then I slid the seat back all the way. And I did that so I can access the 2 mounting bolts at the front of those seat rails, which are right here, one there, and those are an M10 triple square. All right, so now that I got these 2 bolts out, we're gonna go ahead and slide the seat forward so I can access the 2 bolts that are in the back of the brackets. Okay, so now the seat is completely loose, but I still need to get to the harness connector, so I'm gonna try to tip it back and access that right now. Excuse all the stuff, I never actually cleaned down here. So here's where all the connectors are down here. You gotta release this clip here, and all your connection points are down here. Before I disconnect anything and lift that cover, I'm gonna vacuum because I don't wanna get any of this junk into the frame. Pop this off. All right, so this is already interesting. I was expecting to see 3 connectors. The main one, which is this one here for all the power for all the motors. This one here, the yellow one, is for the airbag. And I was expecting to find a black one for the seatbelt buckle, and I don't find it. All right, let's continue digging into this. But basically, these are the 2 connectors we gotta take off. Now, before you disconnect this airbag, disconnect your battery. I had to have the battery hooked up earlier because I needed to move the seat. This is an electronic seat. But now that I have it off, I need to disconnect it before I disconnect this airbag. Okay, for the seatbelt buckle wiring, we're going to take off this bolt here, and then you see the wiring harness comes up here, goes there, goes there. I just unplugged this right now, but the problem is that for this to work, which by the way, you also have a position sensor that is also tied into it, that also needs to come off this car and be transferred onto the Recaro. Here's the thing, how do you connect it then? Since it doesn't have its own separate connector, it all comes into the main one here, which kind of puts it in a pickle because I don't want to cut the wires for this because in case I need to reuse this seat or I need to sell it, at least don't want to have any cut wires. I want them to be able to transfer their own stuff to this. I checked, and unfortunately I can't use my jumper cables because the spacing between these terminals is different than the spacing between these terminals. They are the same, it's just that on this connector they are slightly further apart, so unfortunately I won't be able to use the same jumper cable that I'm using for the airbag harness on this here. With that said, the only option I have then is to fish it all out of the loom here and then depin it from this main connector. And then I can just take the individual pins and put them in their respective spot on the car side. It's more work, but I mean, honestly, it's the cleanest way I can possibly do this without cutting wires. But before I go ahead and start depinning wires, I need to be 100% sure that the wires that I'm pulling are exactly that, because for all I know, this changes color somewhere in one of these connection points and whatnot. So what I gotta do is take my multimeter and check for continuity between one end of the cable and the one that I think it is on this connector. If I have continuity, then I've made my identification and I can proceed. Okay, so confirmed with continuity that this one here, so if you're looking at this connector on the car, I'm going to look at the bottom two, these here. These two correspond to the seatbelt buckle here. And then the ones on the left of the bottom row, these two here, are for the position sensor. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull all of these wires out of this loom and then depin it out of this connector. Something I recommend you guys do before you depin this is to take a picture of where the wires are before you take them off, so that way you don't confuse them. Especially because you have two browns here, I suggest you label them so that you know which one they go into. All right, guys, full stop right now. It does pay to marry a car girl. She asked me, what are you doing? And I explained to her what I had found and what I intended to do with this. And then she's looking at it. So she suggested just remove all the pins, depin all the stuff that you don't need, so that way you can use this same connector for the position sensor and the seatbelt buckle. And then all you have to do is buy this connector separately, repin it with the wires, and then put it back on the seat. And I thought, that makes more sense. And yes, I'm depinning more, but that's not that bad. And the more important thing is that by doing it this way, I have a connector actually going into the car, and it's not just bare pins exposed going into the connector there. And I already looked it up. I'm actually going to put a close-up of the part number for this connector in case you guys need it. But this connector, I already found it from Volkswagen for $17 and change. So yeah, this is so much better. And also note that this is a slide lock connector. So you see this purple thing here? That purple thing actually pushes out, and that's what actually holds all the pins in place. So when you pull that out, all the pins are free to be pulled. Okay, finally, after an hour and 20 minutes unraveling tape, cutting tape, fighting with the slide lock on the red connector, I'm at a point that I can start depinning the connector. The thing with the slide lock, all right, so here you go. You have the connector and you have the slide lock for it. I was able to get the slide lock out about halfway, but then for some reason it would not come out any further than that. And I really didn't want to break it, so I was trying different things. I was trying picks, I was trying, like, there's got to be somewhere where it's being held up, but I couldn't see where. And I didn't want to force it. And after all the removal of the tape and the harness and whatnot to get it all loose, I was tired. I said, you know what, nope, I'm done. So I grabbed some pliers and I just yanked on it, and well, that took it out. So you see, like right here in the middle, you have one set of teeth and then a second set of teeth. That second set of teeth, you see it's a little all busted up there. And I think that's where it was being held up for some reason. I don't know why, but whatever. The point is that it's out and I can finally depin this connector. And just a reminder, I am taking everything off of here except this pair and this pair, the ones at the bottom here. Everything else I do not need, it can stay on the seat. When you go to take off the seatbelt buckle, be very careful with this bolt because as you can tell, it is very, very shallow. So make sure you have it on straight. That is an M8 triple square bolt. Okay, after almost 2 hours, I now finished the wiring side of things. So here's the remains of the factory harness, which everything is still in good shape and whatnot. I did have to cut 2 of the wires because I could not get them to come out with my depinning tools at all. And at some point I just gave up and I just cut them. When I ordered the new connector, it's going to come with a repair kit, so I will have those pins and I'll be able to reassemble this properly. That's where this is. And now, here is the harness that I salvaged. So here's our connector, and then what I did is I just taped it all up and then I split it. One side goes over to the seatbelt buckle and the other side, of course, goes to the position sensor. So this side is good to go. Now, let's look at the airbag thing. There's a resistor. Again, it's a 3.3 ohm resistor. All right, so if you look at this here, this is how it's gonna mount. So on this deal here, only the middle and the right wire get used. This gray one does not get used at all. So basically, I'm going to put this resistor in positions 3 and 2 on this side of the jumper cable. And then I'm going to tape it up and just stick it down here. All right, so we switched the patient here. Now we got on the Recaros. So now I got to put the bracket to the seat. Remember that I got to put the spacer in between the sliders and the bracket. Now I was looking at how I was going to use my hardware. I'm going to try to do it from the bottom, in which case I will have it going through the bracket. And then of course the spacer. And I should have quite a few threads there to tighten down if I have the nut in the rail. All right, so the holes that are on the spacer itself line up with the rails. However, I can't get them to line up on the bracket. All right, guys, well, here you go. It's finally in place, the bracket. And notice, of course, I already explained I couldn't use the spacers because they are meant for a bolt basically from the far extreme to the far extreme. And I would have had to have drilled a hole there for it, which obviously I don't have time for that. So I just went ahead and used the correct holes here, but I ended up spacing it out with washers. And honestly, I wasn't going to do the washers. I actually had it already up and running. But when I put it on the ground and I started and I tested the sliding, I noticed that the heads were too long and they were hitting the bumps that are in there. And so it was limiting how much I could actually go forward and back. That's why I had to take them back off and put the washers in there. And now I have all the clearance I need. All right, so the next thing on the line is getting our seatbelt buckle in place. But here's the problem. This bolt is way too short for this. Because look at how much thicker this flange is compared to the factory one. The factory one is basically sheet metal, but it has a nut welded up on the back side of it. So this is able to squish it down no problem. In this case here, just so you have a visual, that's it. That's all I have. Add in the thickness of this, I only have maybe 2 threads on it, which obviously that's not gonna work. So unfortunately, I cannot use this bolt here. I just went ahead and got me another M8, which I should have used an M10, but I don't have one. So this will work no problem. This hardware, you should absolutely use some Loctite on it so that way it doesn't back out. This being a safety item, you definitely want to be as safe with it as possible. So all of it is gonna go on the outside like this, and then it's gonna go between the 2 legs on off to the side here. I'm basically gonna put it in the same orientation as the factory one was, which was with this. You see how it has this notch here? It's gonna be straight up. Notice also this is a locking nut. Let me actually go put some thread lock on this. Hold on. I recommend you do this by hand and not machine. Okay, now I gotta figure out how to mount this position sensor. So I ran this through here, I secured it to the bracket, and here it is. And then I rolled up all the excess into the back of the bracket here. And I also put the position sensor just touching metal, just how it was over there. Shouldn't throw any coat because it is sitting up against metal. That's the best I can do with it because I really don't have a space on the rail to mount it as with the factory one. And then I left me enough play here so that way I'll be able to connect this no problem. Okay, now we can go ahead and connect our harness. By the way, it is so much easier to put on this aftermarket one than it was the factory one. It's just so much lighter. I took a measurement from the bottom of these pegs to the top of the rail, and it's about 1.25 inches that I would drop the seat. So that would absolutely help, but it still would put me right in, I guess where I was before. So at that point, it's just a matter of, do I like this seat more than the factory one? The other thing that I noticed, the seat bottom on the factory seats is longer, and with my long ass legs, the edge of this here at the top is basically getting me like maybe what, 2/3 down my leg instead of closer to my knee. So those, at least from the bottom perspective, do support me better than these here. But again, this is sitting higher. It's also at a different rake, so that is also influencing it. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the seat out, and then I'll go ahead and remove the sliders and report back. So my primary reason for getting these seats is because I am 6 foot tall. It is annoying because I feel like these seats don't go down low enough, unfortunately. And this, to my surprise, actually sits higher than the Golf R seats at the lowest position. These are fixed, and I was hoping that they would be a lot lower. They're actually taller. So here's the problem. Let me give you my view when I'm sitting here. This is the problem of 6 foot and up drivers. All right, so this is where my eyes are in my driving position, and lo and behold, look at what is directly in my line of sight. This absolutely sucks. So the factory one was like down here, which is still my line of sight, but I would have to like duck over to the side or whatnot. But now this is like below almost my line of sight. And so, yeah, this is not good.
All right, guys, so it's been about a week since I installed the seat, and I now have it in a way that makes me very happy. I ended up having to delete the sliders, unfortunately, but that combined with adding 2 M12 nuts in the front of the floor. I'm gonna be putting up pictures here for you guys so you understand what I did. I essentially took the seat back out, I took the sliders off of the assembly, and then I went ahead and bolted the seats directly to the bracket. And to my surprise, all the holes lined up perfectly with how they were on the bracket, so I did not have to do any additional drilling. I am so glad. Now, I still needed some more rake in the front of the seat, so I actually spaced out the front of the bracket using 2 M12 nuts, and I sandwiched them between the floor and the bottom of the bracket, and that was able to give me enough of a rake that I wanted. All right, so that was all with the driver's seat. Now I'm gonna give it a few months. I wanna make sure I break in the foam and make sure that I actually love it before I do all the work again on the passenger side. So the passenger side is more complex because I have to do everything that I did here, but I do have to tackle the seat occupancy sensor, which I think Volkswagen calls it something like a passenger detection module, some weird name. But that's the function. That's the one that tells you when you need to put on your seatbelt because there's somebody sitting there. I need to figure out how I'm gonna work around that. But that'll be later. Again, I wanna make sure that I actually like this seat long-term because this is my daily driver. My goal was to bring you guys along with me so that way you guys saw the mistakes that I did and hopefully you guys don't do them. All right, guys, so unfortunately the seats did not work out for me, but I'm still gonna be selling them to a friend of mine. And at the end of the day, it was an experiment. I tried it and it just didn't work out for me. The seating position was still basically no different than it was with the factory seat. And it's like, at that point, I'm compromising on electronic features. I know first world problems, obviously. It's also, the factory seat is a much heavier seat than this. And this is much nicer, arguably. However, ultimately, that's money that I could use for other things. And since this ultimately did not achieve what I wanted it for, there's no reason for me to keep them. So put the factory seats back on, and now these are gonna go over to my friend's drift car. So he's excited, I'm excited. So anyway, I hope you guys at least learned how to do this install on your driver's side because I never touched the passenger side. And I hope that putting all that information together into one place makes it a little easier for you guys when you go and do it. So I hope it helped you out, and if it did, give me a like, consider subscribing. Like I always say, more projects coming your way for the Jetta and the Golf R. I'll see you next time.